I love my garden, but I don't have much of a green thumb. This poor little singular red rose is all I've managed this year so far. So if nobody buys you any flowers and you're not very good in the garden like me, what better way than to sit back, relax and make some of your own? Come and join me in my craft room and we'll make some gorgeous rose earrings. So shall we have a look at how to make these? I'll show you how to make the one. When you're making a pair of earrings, this scrolly part, just literally do it backwards, yeah, if you want a mirror image. So I'm going to leave all of the materials in the description box below, and I will just make the one for you on the camera and then you can just replicate it. So what we're going to be doing firstly is taking our 1.5mm and our 1mm wire, and we're going to be winding 0.5mm 24 gauge around it in a 3x3. All right, so I'm using mine off the spool just because it's it means you don't have to cut lengths off and then find that you're missing some wire. And what we're aiming for, excuse me, is a section in the middle where we have 4 centimeters, and then the pattern should take up about 4 centimeters and then another 4 centimeters. All right, so start your wrapping about 4 centimeters along your wire, which is about here. So take your wire and wrap it round 3 times like this, and then up the back like that. All right, so I'm just going to be bringing in my pliers all the time just to give it a squidge. So at this point you should have your wire coming from underneath. Pop your 1.5mm wire on the top, and then wrap that around the top wire 3 times. That's 2 and then 3. Keeping everything nice and neat. We know how wire likes to mess us about a little bit. So I'll just come in with my plier and just tidy things up. Bring it underneath and then wrap around your base wire at the bottom, your 1mm 3 times. And then out up the back, ready. You set yourself up for wrapping around your top wire. Okay, so you just basically keep going along your wire. This should take up around 4 centimeters in the center if I've done my calculations correctly, which I'm hoping I have. Then everything should work out well. And then again around the bottom. Okay, so I won't do all of this on camera because, you know, even though I'm full of northern charm, you don't want to be listening to me wibbling on, I don't think. What I will say is this is very mindful and lots of fun. So, you know, don't forget these are just ideas also. So if you wanted to make, you know, these into rounds or into a longer elongated pear shape, you know, that kind of thing. These are just ideas, literally just ideas for you. So, you know, take them and run with it. All right, so I'll do this off camera just so it's not too boring. What you're aiming for is 14 of these little units, these little sets, 14 along the bottom wire, the 1mm, and 13 sets along the top wire, which is your 1.5. All right, so I'll come back when I've finished. Righty ho, so now you should have 2 of these little guys with 14 along the bottom, 13 along the top, the thicker parts. So we'll just snip our wire off nice and neatly here and nice and neatly here. Okay, let me get rid of that. Oops, honestly, wants to poke me in the eye. So all you have to do now is to just, you know, come in with your plier and just give that a bit of a squish so that everything's nice and happy. So you should have 2 of these. That one's a little bit offset, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter in the slightest. Right, so the next thing we want to do, we'll come on to the flower in a second. Want to make the frame, and my best advice is when you're doing this, to do it both at the same time so that you don't get you you know, they're both the same size, essentially is what I'm getting at. So I'm going to bring my pliers in. So I'm going to bend a little bit to start with my fingers, because they are really good tools. You get a lot of, you know, sort of control if you use your fingers. So just keep bending, make sure that everything is nice and straight and happy. Keep going, flatten things out, keep going. Yeah, I'll do the same with the other one. Make a start, keep bending around, so everybody's nice and happy. Yeah, that's the way we do it. So just obviously, as you're doing that, just make sure that these guys are equal and even. Make sure they're the same shape, you know, same size. This is why I sort of think, you know, it's better to do these kind of things at the same time so that everything is nice and equal. If things start to look a little bit out of shape, like this one is doing here, you can quite happily bring a mandrel in if you want to, as long as you don't squish things up a little bit. Just bring a mandrel in, you know, and just sort of fettle it a little bit. That's a bit better, you know. Give it a squidge, give it a squeeze. There we go, squidge and a squeeze. There we are. All you want really is for them to both be the same shape and the same size, which they pretty much are. Right, so the next thing we want to do is to create, you know, this area here. So what I'm going to do is measure 2 centimeters along each side of, let's just double check that they're, I think that one's just a little tiny bit wide. So let's just bring that in a little bit. That a bit better. Do they look about the same? Yeah, I think they do. Just maybe just slightly more on that side. Look, this is all about just, you know, doing whatever. Using your fingers, using your tools, just to have a look and make sure everything's pretty much the same shape and size. It kind of is. I'm happy enough. So what we do is the 1.5 millimeter wire, we just really want to measure that along, and I'm going to cut 2.5 centimeters, which is about here. Actually, let me get now, where is it? Oh, I haven't got it, never mind. I was going to bring my Sharpie in, but it doesn't matter. Just do it by eye if you can. And just snip the 1.5 millimeter wire, and the same on the other side. Like that. Obviously, do it with both, so that we have this. Yeah, just leave these guys to start. You know, just leave those for now. Come in with your plier. So I'm just going to use the, if you want to, you can file those down a little bit. I won't do that on camera because it's just too exhaustive, right? Yeah, so take your plier and just literally bend a loop around like this. And we want to do the same on the other side, which I always find really difficult for some reason because I've got to reverse it. Let me see if I can, no, I see you can't do it on that side. I always struggle with this part, you know, when you have to reverse something. Never mind, so just start it. Do the best you can, like with everything in life. Do the best you can with what you have. It's limited jewellery making skills. There we go. There we are. So hopefully they are the same size and shape. Oh, we wing it, don't we, on this channel? How much fun. We wing it. I'm happy with winging it. Are you? Let's just wing it. Let's just wing it. Okay, so we do the same on this one. Chop. Ooh, yeah, watch your eyes, guys. Watch your eyes. There we go. And do the same on this one as well. Okay, so bend it backwards. Yeah, am I in camera? I hope I am. I'm just having one of those days today. I just, you know, and you just, hey ho, whatever. There's all sorts of stuff going on in the world at the moment, and in our country, the UK, we are in a bit of a mess. So my philosophy is make something pretty and have done with it. Who cares? All right, so here we go. Right, so we have our 2 matching frames. At least they should be matching, and I'm glad that they do, yes. Next thing we want to do is to just chop these 2 off just where, I hope I've measured these right, just where, you know, at the top of the bends here. Gosh, my craft room is full of bits of wire. Who cares? Right, so what we want to do now is to make these tiny little scrolls. I mean, you can do what you want at this point, can't you? So the next part that we need to do is to bring in your round nose pliers, and we're going to do these little scrolls. Like I say, if you're going to be doing it, you know, as earrings, then mirror image type of thing. So I'm just going to start the ball rolling, and I'm just going to nip off just the end there, just to make it nice and neat. Scroll it round like this, and then do the same with the other one, but in the opposite direction. Yeah, so we need to bring that one we need to bring that one in now in the opposite direction. So I will just snip that off like that, so that everything's nice and rounded and happy. Well, you know, you do whatever you want. Do whatever you want on this one. So just place them next to each other. They look okay. Yeah, I think they do. And then we'll do the same here, but I'm just going to bring that in. Just snip that bit off. And just bring it in just so it sits at the top. But like I say, you can do whatever you like, can't you? Do whatever you like. You know, world is your oyster with this kind of thing. Just do whatever you please. I will just do this one, seeing as I'm here. Start that one off. Just snip that bit off. I'll snip the ends off just because it gives it a more rounded, you know, a more rounded effect. Less like an angle on it, if that makes sense. So shall we have a look here and see how we're doing? Yep, that looks fine. Okay, so the neighbours have started with some drilling, so I'm just going to close the door. Sorry about that, so I'm not entirely sure if that will make any difference at all, but you know, it is, you know, people have to do work in their homes, don't they? So this is what we have. We've got our frames, okay? So shall we move on to how to do the flower next? This is another fun part. I love doing these little flowers. So what you're going to need is some beads. So I've got some little selection of beads here. I'm using, I think these are 4x6 millimeter drop beads. I have quite a lot of these. Yeah, 4x6. You can make them in larger sizes, obviously, and I get my little drop beads from the beautiful people at Check Beads Exclusive. I'll leave a link to their subscription box in the description box below. It's a lovely subscription box, but I use these beads quite a lot, and I've collected quite a few of these over the years, so good to use them, isn't it? And let's have a look what else I've got in here. I'm going to use one of these little yellow rounds. That's a 4mm to make the center part. Okay, let's go ahead and do this, shall we? Now I'm going to be using 0.4mm, 26 gauge, I believe, and you're going to need, let's have a think, about 20 inches. I'm going to tell you in inches, just because I've got an inch marker on my workboard under here. But on the screen somewhere, I'll tell you everything in inches and centimetres. just to make life easy for everybody. So you're going to need 6 of these little beads. All right, so I'll take this as slowly as I can. Pop your 6 little drop beads, oops, onto your 0.4 wire. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Righty-ho. So you want to drop these down to the center. So find the center as best you can and just have them drop down into the center. Make sure everything's equal, give or take. Now pop one bead back up to the top because we're going to cross over the wires. Now, before you start, obviously double check that your wires will go through the holes of the beads that you've got. I know that these go through okay, but you know. So cross your 0.4 wire across inside the bead. And then what you want to do is very carefully pull the wires through. And what we're wanting is equal lengths on either side as best we can. Equal lengths on either side. So I'm hoping that if I do this by eye, I won't be too far off. Shall we measure it just for a bit of fun and see how far off I am? I love testing myself like this. Shall we see how far off I am? Yeah, I'm a little bit off there. A little bit off, but I'm going to test myself just so I can see, just for my own benefit. You know, I don't really care what anybody else thinks. This is a test. Let's have a look. 24. Oh gosh, is it going to be 24? 25. Oh, never mind. Anyway, I was nearly there. So what you want to do is splay your little beads out like this. Now we're going to be wrapping our 2 wires in between each of the petals, what I'm going to call petals. So you do want a little bit of give. You don't want to pull them too tight at this point because we are going to be popping, you know, wire in between. So I'm going to suggest that what that looks like is about right. So you've got a little bit of room in between each of the beads. Yeah, so it looks like that. Now then, take obviously I'm right-handed, so if you're left-handed, go the opposite way, obviously. But pop the beads on your finger like this and pull this underneath and stick them both together. So as you can see here, I've wound one around the back so that they're both together. Does that make sense? And then take them both underneath the next bead like this. Can you see that? The fat fingers out of the way, and then up in between the 2 beads. Then we want to, let me just snip the end off that because it's much easier to fit it through the center of the beads if they're both the same length. So we've taken it behind and then behind the next bead, and then keeping everything nice and neat. I want to take both of these wires and pop them through. Very carefully pulling them through. Try not to cross them if you can, just because it's a little neater if they're not crossed. That one was crossed, but it doesn't matter. And then just tug slightly. We're going to be doing 2 passes around here, yeah, so that it'll look a little something like this. Take both around the back of the next bead and then up in between. Run the wires through your fingers and pop them through the gap, and then pull just ever so slightly, tug. Things should sort of snap into place. There we go, you hear that? And then behind the next bead and up in between. And then you keep going all the way around until you've done 6 wraps. you know, 6 passes underneath. Let's do the next one. Underneath the next bead, I have a nice big fly in here. Hello, blue bottle. And then through. Behind the next bead, in between, and through. Bit of a tug. Being careful when you're tugging because you don't want to, you know, to crack your beads. But you do want to see a little bit of copper wire in between each of the beads, yeah, because it sort of differentiates the petals, if you will. It's a pretty design feature, I think. Right, there we are. So we've got our 6 passes. Now I just want to do exactly the same and go around another 6 times. Okay, so around the back of the bead, through the center, like this, around the back of the bead, up and through the center. Okay, so do that another 6 times. Like I say, you want 6 passes round twice. Okay, so around the back of the bead, through the center, giving them a little tug every time. Okay, and then up like this. So this is what we have. Can you see that? Pretty. So the next thing we want to do is to thread our little center bead on. I just thought the yellow was quite nice with the red. But again, you can use any beads you like. Pop both of the wires. Again, like I've said before, check that both the wires go through the bead that you've chosen. And then pull it over the top like that to make the center of the bead. All right, so you want to do 2 of those. So when you've done 2 of these, we'll come back. Okay, so when you have your little flowers done, just you'll find that both of these wires will be coming out the same side. So just literally twist one around the back so that they have, you know, they're coming out on either side of the flower, because we need to now attach these to the frame. Yeah, so pop it over the top, and you'll find that the flower should, if I've done all my measurements correctly, it should sort of sit just on top of the frame quite nicely there. All right, so take the one side of the wire and wrap it around, coming back up this side, just sort of sight the flower, and it should look okay like that. We'll wrap it a couple of times, pop it, am I in frame again? Probably not. Wrap it around a couple of times so that it's nice and attached, nice and neat. You know, I mean, like with anything else with wire, you know, there's a little bit of room for maneuver. Just a couple of times, and then back round again underneath. Yeah, you won't be able to tell too much because the wrapping will be nice and neat, and it'll sort of it'll morph into, sort of hide into the rest of the wrappings that you've done. Can you see what I mean? There we go. So squish that down and then around at the back, and then snip these off. Snip, and you'll find that the 0.4 wire will sit and nestle quite nicely into the other wrappings. And all then you need to do is to very gently squish those wires down. Can't find it, there it is. There we are. So there's our little flower sighted on to the frame. I won't do the other one obviously because we've got another one going on here. Yeah, so all I need to do now is to attach a jump ring and an ear wire. So let's get a jump ring. Here we are. Just snip off, you know, I'm not even going to give you the size of these jump rings because you can just experiment and do whatever you like with the jump rings, can't you? You don't really need all the measurements. I think these might be 8mm, but whatever fits, you know, pop your jump ring on. Use your tools instead of your fingers, obviously. I'm just doing it for speed. Close those in slightly if you need to. Make sure everybody's happy. And I'm just going to rob the ear wire off here because I don't have a spare. And then just pop it on top. There you go. So just squish everything down. I mean, that might move slightly, you know. If it does, you know, because I've done this in front of the camera, do it a bit tighter and a bit more neatly. So you can see that's the reverse. Quite pretty on the reverse and quite pretty on the obverse, obviously. There you go. So there's our gorgeous floral, flower, scrolly, wrapped earrings. Aren't they pretty? I really like these. Make them in all sorts of different colours, different shapes, different sizes if you want, but I just thought that you'd enjoy making these. All right, so I'll see you in the next one, my friends, and take good care of yourselves. It's a crazy world.